The Crimson Nebula hung in the void like a dying ember, its scarlet gases swirling in patterns that defied conventional physics. Within its heart, the scattered remnants of 1,000 civilizations had gathered for what they all knew would be their final stand against the dark world's inexorable advance. Dr. Elra Zarin pressed her palm against the observation deck's transparent aluminum, watching the enemy fleets approach through the nebula's shifting veils. The dark world's vessels moved like living shadows, their hulls absorbing light rather than reflecting it, creating holes in space that made the eye recoil. She had been studying them for 3 years now, ever since her exile from the Galactic Science Consortium, and still their technology remained an enigma wrapped in nightmares. "How many?" asked Commander Thane Corvus as he approached, his weathered face bearing the weight of leading humanity's last military force. 17,000 confirmed signatures, Elra replied without turning from the window. But their stealth technology is improving. There could be twice that number. Behind them, the command center of Haven Station buzzed with desperate activity. Representatives from dozens of species worked side by side: humans, the crystalline Zephyrians, the gaseous veil dancers, even a few surviving architects whose living ships had carried refugees across half the galaxy. They had put aside millennia of conflicts and prejudices, united now by the simple desire to continue existing. The dark world offered no negotiations, no quarter, no explanation for their genocidal campaign. They simply arrived at a star system, consumed everything with technological and biological life, then moved on, leaving behind worlds stripped of all complexity, reduced to simple matter and energy. 47 civilizations had already fallen to their advance. "The forge," Thane said quietly. "Is it ready?" Elra finally turned from the window, her green eyes reflecting the nebula's crimson glow. Her once pristine lab coat bore the stains of countless experiments, and her dark hair had grown wild during months of barely interrupted research. "The calculations are complete. The stellar engineering is in place. But Thane," she paused, searching for words that could convey the magnitude of what they were considering. "What we're talking about isn't just a weapon. It's a fundamental violation of reality's basic structure. Explain it to me again." Elra moved to the central holographic display, calling up a 3-dimensional model of the Crimson Nebula. At its heart, a star burned with unnatural intensity, its surface marked by geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. "We've turned the nebula's central star into a forge for dark energy weapons," she began, her voice taking on the measured cadence she'd once used in university lectures. "Dark energy normally works on cosmic scales, driving the universe's expansion. But by creating artificial gravitational lenses and quantum field manipulators around the star, we can concentrate and weaponize it." The display showed streams of dark energy being drawn from the quantum foam itself, channeled through massive orbital arrays, then forged in the star's core into coherent projectiles. "The weapons themselves would be unstoppable," Elra continued. "They would unmake matter at the subatomic level, turning dark world ships into expanding clouds of elementary particles." But she gestured, and the display zoomed out to show the local galactic cluster. "Dark energy exists in a delicate balance with normal matter and ordinary energy. Weaponizing it at this scale could trigger a cascade failure. Meaning we could accidentally cause a false vacuum decay. Reality itself could unravel, starting from this point and expanding at the speed of light until the entire universe becomes a homogeneous soup of quantum nothingness." Thane was quiet for a long moment, studying the display. Around them, the command center's activity seemed to fade into background noise. Finally, he spoke. "What are the odds?" "My models suggest a 37% chance of localized reality breakdown, confined to this galactic cluster. A 12% chance of universal cascade failure. But Thane, those numbers are based on theoretical frameworks that have never been tested at these energy scales. We could be completely wrong. And if we don't activate the forge..." Then, in approximately 18 hours, the dark world will complete their encirclement. Their previous patterns suggest they'll begin the consumption process immediately after. Every living thing in the nebula will be dead within 72 hours. A new voice cut through their conversation. Then the choice is simple. They turned to see Archon Velter approaching, her crystalline form catching and refracting the command center's lights into prismatic rainbows. The Zephyrian leader's thoughts resonated directly in their minds, as was her species' way. Certainty of extinction versus possibility of survival, Velter continued. The mathematics are clear, even if the physics are not. It's not that simple, Elra protested. We're not just gambling with our own lives. If I'm wrong about the cascade parameters, we could be destroying civilizations we've never even encountered, entire regions of space that might never have been threatened by the dark world. And if you're right, Thane said quietly, we save everyone. Before Elra could respond, the command center's alert klaxons began blaring. A communications officer called out across the chaos, "Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the Dark World Fleet." The room fell silent. In 3 years of warfare, the enemy had never attempted communication. "Put it through," Thane ordered. The central display flickered, then resolved into an image that made several of the younger staff members step backward in instinctive revulsion. The entity that appeared was vaguely humanoid in shape, but its form seemed to exist in more dimensions than normal space could properly contain. Its face was a constantly shifting pattern of geometric forms that hurt to perceive directly. When it spoke, its voice resonated not through the speakers but directly in their minds, carrying harmonics that suggested vast, alien intelligence. "We are the harbingers of simplification," it said. "We have observed your preparations. You seek to wound reality itself rather than accept the elegance of reduction. This is curious." Thane stepped forward, though Elra noticed his hands were trembling slightly. "Why?" he asked. "Why are you doing this?" "Complexity is chaos," the entity replied. "Consciousness is an aberration. Life disrupts the perfect symmetries of existence. We restore balance, we bring peace. You bring death, we bring truth. Your universe grows toward maximum entropy, as is natural and correct. Life fights this destiny, creating pockets of unnatural order, building structures that should not exist. We simply accelerate the inevitable." Velter's crystalline form flared with indignant light. "You speak of peace, but you offer only extinction. Extinction is the ultimate peace. In nothingness there is no suffering, no conflict, no fear. We offer this gift freely." Elra found herself speaking before she realized it. "And what about beauty? What about love, discovery, the joy of creating something new?" The entity's impossible geometry shifted, and for a moment its attention focused entirely on her. The weight of that regard was almost unbearable. "You are the one called Zarin. You have built a weapon from the foundation of reality itself. Do you not see the irony? In your desperation to preserve complexity, you risk returning everything to the primordial simplicity from which it came. You would become what you fight against." "No," Elra said, though her voice wavered. "We're fighting for the right to exist, to choose our own destiny. Choice is illusion. There is only what is and what must be. We offer you one final opportunity. Surrender now, and your end will be swift. Continue to resist, and we will make your reduction slow and thorough." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. 18 hours, Thane said finally. "How long do you need to complete the forge activation sequence?" Elra was staring at the now empty display, the entity's words echoing in her mind. Was there truth in what it had said? Was she really about to become the very thing she fought against, a force that would simplify the universe down to nothingness? "Elra," she shook herself back to the present. 6 hours for final calibrations. Another 2 for the charging sequence. 8 hours total if nothing goes wrong. Then we have 10 hours to prepare for the worst-case scenario. Velter, I need you to coordinate evacuation protocols for non-essential personnel. If this fails, at least some of us might be able to escape in fast ships before the reality cascade reaches us. And if it succeeds, the Archon asked, then we find out what kind of universe we've saved, Thane replied grimly. The Omega Forge had been Elra's obsession for the better part of 2 decades, though for most of that time it had existed only as theoretical equations and speculative physics papers that her colleagues dismissed as interesting but impractical. The Dark World's emergence had transformed academic curiosity into desperate necessity. She stood now in the Forge's control chamber, a spherical room at the heart of Haven Station, where the walls themselves were made of crystallized spacetime, allowing direct observation of higher dimensional structures. Around her, the Forge's components stretched across hundreds of millions of kilometers. Gravitational lenses the size of small moons, quantum field manipulators that existed partially outside normal space, and at the center, the star itself, its natural fusion processes hijacked and transformed into something entirely new. Dr. Marcus Webb, her former research partner from the consortium, worked at a nearby console. His exile had come shortly after hers, when he'd refused to abandon their joint research into exotic energy applications. The intervening years had aged him considerably. His once blonde hair had gone completely gray, and deep lines marked his face. Field coherence is holding at 94%, he reported, not looking up from his instruments. The stellar metamorphosis is proceeding exactly as modeled. Through the chamber's transparent walls, Elra could see the star's transformation in real time. Its surface now bore geometric patterns that spiraled inward according to hyperbolic mathematical functions, each one a gateway through which dark energy was being drawn from the quantum vacuum itself. The sight was simultaneously beautiful and terrifying. A star turned into a cosmic horror that violated everything she'd once believed about the natural order. "Marcus," she said quietly, "are we doing the right thing?" He finally looked up, and she saw her own doubts reflected in his eyes. "I've been asking myself that question for months. Every time I run the cascade calculations, every time I model the potential consequences. But then I think about my daughter." Elra knew the story. Marcus's daughter had been studying xenobiology on Kepler VII when the Dark World arrived. The planet had been one of the first to fall, its population of 40 million reduced to component atoms in less than 6 hours. She was working on a project to help Terran crops adapt to alien soil conditions, Marcus continued, trying to solve hunger on the border worlds. Such a small thing in the cosmic scheme, but it mattered to her. It mattered to the people she was trying to help. He turned back to his console. If we don't activate the Forge, then everything she worked for, everything she died for becomes meaningless. The Dark World wins, and the universe becomes a simpler, emptier place. Before Elra could respond, her personal communicator chimed with an incoming message. The sender ID made her heart skip. Dr. Sarah Chen, her former mentor and the only member of the Galactic Science Consortium, who had supported her research even after her exile. The message was brief. "Elra, I've been monitoring your energy signatures from the Helix Observatory. I know what you're attempting. Please reconsider. The universe is bigger than this one conflict." Elra closed the message without responding, but its words stayed with her. Sarah was right, of course. The universe was vast beyond comprehension, filled with wonders they had barely begun to catalog. If the Forge triggered a cascade failure, all of that would be lost. Civilizations that had never heard of the Dark World, species still evolving on distant planets, potential forms of life that wouldn't emerge for millions of years, all of it erased because she had chosen to fight rather than accept extinction. But then she thought of the children she'd seen in Haven Station's refugee centers. Human children, yes, but also Zephyrian younglings whose crystalline forms still showed the clarity of innocence, and veiled dancer spawn who danced through the air in patterns that spoke of pure joy. They didn't deserve to be simplified out of existence for the crime of being complex. "Dr. Zarin," A new voice drew her attention to the chamber's entrance, where Lieutenant Torres, one of Thane's aides, waited nervously. "The commander requests your presence in the war room. We've detected movement in the Dark World fleet." The war room was located at Haven Station's strategic center, its walls covered with displays showing real-time tactical information. Thane stood before the main screen, which depicted the Crimson Nebula and the surrounding space in 3 dimensions. The enemy fleet showed as dark red markers arranged in a perfect sphere around the nebula, but as Elra watched, she could see the formation beginning to contract. "They're moving ahead of schedule," Thane explained without preamble. "Our best estimate now puts their arrival at the nebula's outer boundary in 14 hours instead of 18. "That's still enough time," Elra said, though she felt a chill of uncertainty. "The forge will be ready." "There's more." Thane gestured, and the display zoomed in on one section of the enemy formation. "We're detecting something new. These signatures don't match anything we've seen before." The new contacts were larger than the standard Dark World vessels, and they seemed to pulse with an energy pattern that made the display itself flicker and distort. Admiral Corvash, the grizzled Terran fleet commander, spoke up from across the room. "My tactical analysts believe these are siege platforms, weapons designed to crack large-scale defensive installations." "Or," said a new voice, "they are something else entirely." Everyone turned to see Dr. Yuki Tanaka entering the war room, her small frame belying the authority in her voice. As the consortium's former head of xenological studies, she had spent years analyzing Dark World technology from the few intact samples they'd managed to recover. "The energy signatures suggest they're not weapons platforms," Tanaka continued, moving to the central display. "They're processing centers. I believe the Dark World has brought equipment specifically designed to study the Omega Forge." "Study it?" Thane frowned. "For what purpose?" "Think about it from their perspective," Tanaka said. "We've created a technology that manipulates the fundamental structure of reality itself. Even if it destroys us, they might want to understand how we did it. The principles behind the forge could give them capabilities they've never possessed before." Elra felt a new kind of horror washing over her. If they reverse-engineer the forge technology, they could potentially accelerate their simplification process, Tanaka confirmed. Instead of consuming civilizations one world at a time, they could potentially unravel entire galactic clusters simultaneously. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Not only were they risking universal cascade failure by activating the forge, but they might also be handing their enemies the keys to even more efficient destruction. "Recommendations?" Thane asked quietly. Admiral Corvash was the first to speak. "We accelerate our timeline, hit them with everything we have before they can get close enough to study the forge in detail. Our conventional weapons are useless against them," Velter's thoughts interjected. "We have seen this demonstrated repeatedly." "Then we activate the forge now," Marcus suggested over the comm system from the control chamber. "Incomplete calibration is better than letting them capture our work." "No," Elra said firmly. "If we activate the forge without proper calibration, the cascade probability jumps to over 60%. We'd be almost guaranteeing universal destruction. As opposed to possibly guaranteeing it later when they have our technology," Thane pointed out. Elra closed her eyes, feeling the weight of impossible choices. Every option led to potential catastrophe. Every decision could be the one that ended everything. When she opened her eyes again, her resolve had crystallized. "We stick to the timeline, we complete the calibrations properly, but we also prepare for the worst-case scenario. Which is, we rig the forge for total self-destruction. If the Dark World shows any sign of capturing the technology, we detonate the entire star. The explosion would take out a significant portion of their fleet and ensure our research dies with us." "And us along with it," Admiral Corvash observed dryly. "Yes, but at least we deny them the weapon." Thane nodded slowly. "How long to implement the self-destruct option?" 2 hours. Marcus and I would need to reconfigure the containment fields and install quantum charges in the stellar core. It's technically complex. Do it. In the meantime, I want all non-essential personnel evacuated to the outer system. If this goes badly, at least some record of our civilizations might survive. As the meeting broke up and people began hurrying to their assignments, Elra found herself standing alone before the tactical display, watching the enemy markers creep slowly inward. Somewhere among those dark ships were minds that had decided the universe would be better without life, without complexity, without the messy, chaotic beauty of consciousness. She thought again of Sarah's message, of the vast universe that might be destroyed by her choices. But she also thought of the children in the refugee centers, of Marcus's daughter working to feed the hungry on distant worlds, of all the small acts of love and creation that made existence meaningful. The universe was vast, yes, but it was also precious. And if the choice was between certain extinction and uncertain survival, she would choose uncertainty every time, even if it meant risking everything. The Forge's self-destruct mechanism required delicate work in the star's inner corona, where temperatures exceeded 10 million degrees and gravitational fields could crush normal matter into exotic particles. Elra and Marcus descended through layers of protective force fields in a specially shielded work pod, their suits bristling with quantum stabilizers and emergency teleportation devices. "I keep thinking about the Heisenberg Observatory," Marcus said as they approached the installation zone, his voice crackling through the comm system. "Remember when we were students there, trying to measure the quantum foam fluctuations?" Elra smiled despite their grim circumstances. "Professor Valdez told us we were wasting our time, that the energy scales were too small to ever be relevant. Young minds obsessed with impossibilities," Marcus quoted their old instructor. "If he could see us now." Their pod passed through a constellation of orbital platforms, each one a triumph of engineering that pushed the boundaries of known physics. The gravitational lenses alone had required the combined efforts of 12 different species, their technologies merged in ways that previous generations would have considered impossible. "Sometimes I wonder if the dark world has a point," Marcus said quietly. "Look at what we've built here. We've turned a star into a weapon, violated the fundamental structure of spacetime, created something that could literally unmake reality. Maybe that level of technological power is unnatural." Unnatural. Elra guided their pod through a gap between two massive field generators, each one projecting forces that warped local space into non-Euclidean geometries. "Marcus, everything we've ever built has been unnatural. Fire was unnatural. The wheel was unnatural. Faster-than-light travel was unnatural. The only difference is scale. This is different, and you know it. We're not just building tools anymore. We're editing the fundamental laws of physics." They reached the installation point, a region where multiple field streams converged in a complex dance of forces. Here, the star's natural fusion processes had been hijacked and transformed, turning stellar nucleosynthesis into something that would have horrified astrophysicists just a century ago. "Installation point confirmed," Elra announced, though her attention was divided between the technical requirements and Marcus's philosophical concerns. "Beginning quantum charge deployment." The charges themselves were barely larger than molecules, but each one contained compressed spacetime folded into impossible configurations. When detonated, they would create a cascade of exotic particle interactions that would cause the star to collapse into a brief but incredibly energetic black hole, then explode outward in a burst of gamma radiation and dark energy. "Elra," Marcus said as they worked, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly." "What? Do you actually believe we can control this? Do you really think we understand dark energy well enough to weaponize it without consequences?" She paused in her work, considering the question carefully. Around them, the star's modified corona twisted in patterns that followed mathematical principles humanity had only discovered 3 years ago. "No," she said finally, "I don't think we understand it well enough. I don't think anyone could understand it well enough. We're operating at the edge of theoretical knowledge, extrapolating from principles that have never been tested at these scales. Then why? Because understanding isn't always necessary for action, she interrupted. Sometimes you have to choose between certain doom and uncertain hope. The dark world represents absolute certainty, extinction, simplification, the end of everything we are. The forge represents uncertainty. Maybe we save everyone, maybe we destroy everything, maybe something in between. But uncertainty means possibility, and possibility is the only thing that separates life from death. They completed the charge installation in silence, both lost in their own thoughts. As they began the journey back to Haven Station, Elra received an encrypted communication from Dr. Tanaka. Emergency meeting. The xenologist's voice was tight with tension. We've intercepted dark world communications. You need to see this immediately. The meeting convened in a secure chamber deep within Haven Station's core, its walls lined with quantum scramblers to prevent eavesdropping. Tanaka had assembled a small group. Elra, Thane, Velter, and Admiral Corvesh. We've been monitoring dark world communications for 3 years, Tanaka began without preamble, but their encryption methods have been impenetrable. Until now. The Forge's energy emissions are interfering with their quantum communication protocols, creating brief windows where we can intercept and decode their transmissions. She activated a holographic display that showed strings of alien symbols slowly resolving into translated text. What we've learned changes everything, Tanaka continued. The dark world isn't a single civilization. It's a coalition of species that have all reached the same conclusion, that consciousness and complexity are existential threats to universal stability. The translated communications scrolled past, filled with references to cognitive viruses, reality parasites, and the cancer of awareness. They believe, Tanaka said, that consciousness itself is a violation of natural law, that minds capable of observation and choice disrupt the quantum substrate of reality, creating instabilities that will eventually cause universal collapse. Thane leaned forward. Are they right? That's the terrifying thing, Tanaka replied. They might be. There are quantum mechanics theories that suggest conscious observation plays a fundamental role in collapsing probability waves into definite states. If consciousness is widespread enough, if there are enough minds making observations and choices, the cumulative effect could theoretically destabilize spacetime itself. Elra felt a chill that had nothing to do with the chamber's temperature. They're saying that life itself is the enemy. More specifically, they're saying that intelligence is the enemy. Non-conscious life, simple biological processes, those they consider acceptable. But minds that can contemplate themselves, that can make choices and create new realities, those they see as cosmic toxins that must be eliminated. Velter's crystalline form flickered with agitated colors. Then they view themselves as antibodies. Exactly. They've accepted the necessity of their own eventual extinction once their task is complete. The communications suggest they plan to eliminate all conscious life in the universe, then systematically shut down their own cognitive processes. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't conquest or territorial expansion or even simple xenophobia. This was ideological warfare on a cosmic scale, with the fundamental nature of existence itself as the battlefield. There's more, Tanaka continued, calling up a new set of translations. They know about the Forge's cascade risks. In fact, they're counting on them. What do you mean? They believe that if we activate the Forge and trigger a false vacuum decay, it will actually serve their purposes. The cascade would indeed destroy all complex structures in the universe, leaving behind only the simplest possible forms of matter and energy. From their perspective, it would be the ultimate simplification. Elra stared at the translations, feeling a growing sense of horror. They want us to destroy the universe. They want us to destroy complexity, Tanaka corrected. To them, A universe of simple particles and basic forces is preferable to one filled with consciousness and choice. If we trigger the cascade, we do their work for them. And if we don't activate the forge, Admiral Corvash asked, then they systematically eliminate every conscious species, planet by planet, until the job is done. Either way, they win. Thane was quiet for a long moment, studying the alien communications. Finally, he spoke. Is there a third option? I've been thinking about that, Elra said slowly. What if we could modify the forge's output? Instead of creating weapons designed to destroy Dark World ships, what if we created something designed to change them? Change them how? The Dark World Coalition is held together by a shared philosophy. That consciousness is harmful. But what if we could use dark energy to directly affect their cognitive processes? Force them to experience the beauty of complexity, the joy of discovery, the wonder of creation. Tanaka frowned. You're talking about weaponized enlightenment. I'm talking about showing them what they're trying to destroy, Elra replied. Dark energy can affect quantum states at the most fundamental level. If we could create a field that enhanced rather than destroyed consciousness, that opened minds to new possibilities instead of closing them, it would still be a violation of their free will, Velter observed. Is it? Or would it be restoring their free will? They've chosen to eliminate choice itself from the universe. Maybe what they need is to be reminded of why choice matters. Thane stood up, pacing to the far wall where a window showed the Crimson Nebula's roiling gases. How long would this modification take? I don't know, Elra admitted. The theoretical work alone could take weeks. We'd be essentially inverting the forge's entire purpose, changing it from a weapon of destruction to a tool of transformation. We don't have weeks, Admiral Corvash pointed out. We have less than 12 hours before the Dark World fleet reaches effective weapons range. Then we make a choice, Thane said quietly. We activate the original forge design, hope for the best, and prepare for the worst. Or we try Elra's modification, knowing it might not work and that we'll have no backup plan if it fails. Or, Elra said, we do both. Everyone turned to look at her. The forge's stellar core has enough capacity to create two different types of weapons simultaneously. We prepare the destruction protocol as planned, but we also implement the consciousness enhancement field. When the Dark World arrives, we hit them with both, try to change their minds but be ready to destroy them if the transformation fails. And the cascade risks, Tanaka asked. Higher, Elra admitted. Significantly higher. We'd be manipulating dark energy in two different ways simultaneously, creating quantum interference patterns we can't fully predict. The cascade probability jumps to at least 50%. Better than certain extinction, Thane said. Do it. As the meeting broke up and everyone hurried to their assignments, Elra found herself once again facing the fundamental question that had haunted her since the project began. Was the right to exist worth the risk of destroying existence itself? In 10 hours, she would have her answer.